Let's start with our motivation. To recall that with karma, there's individual karma and also collective karma. So karma we create due to our own physical, verbal, and mental actions, and karma that we create together with other people in a group that where the people have come together for a specific purpose. And so by being part of that group with that particular motivation to accomplish a particular action, then we create karma together. And we also experience the result of the karma because we agree with the motivation for which the group was formed. Then if other people in the group do those actions, we accumulate some virtue or non-virtue, like the kind of action they did. That was the reason for the group forming. So today we're together to create virtue, to listen to the Dharma. So we create some virtuous collective karma. But within that, we all have our own thoughts. And so some people may have a virtuous motivation and some people a non-virtuous motivation. And so still be creating individual karma. And similarly, we will experience results as a group based on the karma created together with those people that were gathered for a particular purpose. But within that, we will also experience the results of individual karma. So it's important to always keep karma and its functioning in mind in our daily life. If we forget about karma or dismiss its importance, then we become very negligent about monitoring our mind and about being diligent in terms of our motivations and our actions. And then it becomes very easy just to slide back to our usual way of looking things, which is our present happiness and our present suffering and what benefits them or harms them. And when we have that very small perspective, then it's so easy to create a lot of negativity. So for that reason, it's quite important to always keep the law of karma and its effects in our mind and think of the long-term results for ourselves and for others due to our actions. And when we do that, it gives us more inner strength to avoid negativity and to create virtue. So let's try and keep that in mind, since we want to create merit and avoid non-virtue, because those are crucial activities to gaining realizations on the path and attaining our final goal of full awakening. Let's keep that in mind. The perspective of remembering karma is, I think, quite important in terms of making us mindful so that we remember our precepts, and so that we have introspective awareness that monitors our mind. Yeah, because it's so easy to slip into our usual view, isn't it? Yeah, the usual short-term view of, I like this and I don't like that, without thinking of the long-term results of our physical, verbal, and mental actions. So to keep, this awareness of karma, it's really quite important. Quite important. And it also is very helpful for when we face difficulties to say, oh, this is the result of my karma. There's nobody to blame on the outside. There's nobody to get mad at. This result of my own distorted actions in the past. So let's rein in that angry energy, because if I'm going to be mad at anything, I should point the finger at my own self-centeredness. Yeah. Like Dharma-Rakshita does in The Wheel of Sharp Weapons. You're the one who's causing all the problems. Yeah, where the you is the self-centered mind, not another sentient being. So very helpful that way. Yeah. And, when doing that, to remember the self-centered mind is not who we are. It's not union oneness with us. It can be eliminated, but it's like a poisonous snake. Yeah, that may look so beautiful with all its speckles, but it bites and it poisons us. So we're going to talk about non-existence, right? That sounds really good, doesn't it? Let's talk about what doesn't exist. Yeah? And this is one of the things that, makes you wonder, well, maybe the category of non-existence isn't existent because we can talk about non-existence and we can put things in that category. So maybe that category does exist. Yeah? But according to the system, they say, no, it doesn't exist. But sometimes it almost seems like it should. The non-existent things definitely don't exist. But the category, yeah. They say that, well, we'll read and then we'll hear what they say. Okay, so this is non-existence with a TS at the end, not a CE at the end. So it's a noun, okay? Before we just start, does anybody have any syllogisms they wanted to write on the board and look into?
One that I don't hold now, but I realized I was holding a lot during my childhood was, my mother is bad because she acts under the control of negative emotions.
Oh, all you do is substitute I, and there you go. And there everybody is. Okay, so subject, predicate,
Is bad
and reason.
because she acts under the control of negative emotions.
Okay, property.
My mother acts under the control of negative emotions.
True? Not true?
True.
True? Okay. Well, it's better to put a time in there, because if you say she acts under the influence of negative emotions, it's unclear whether you mean she always does that or she sometimes does that.
If we're always acting under the control of ignorance, does that qualify?
Well, that means you can create virtue under the influence of ignorance. So do you want to put her virtue as bad?
No. My mother is bad because she sometimes acts under the control of negative emotions.
Or when she acts.
Yes.
How about doing that?
Bad. Yeah, that's more fitting.
Yeah, because, you can't. Yeah, because she's sometimes. Yeah.
How often?
Yeah, often, whatever it is. But what it does is it means she isn't always bad.
It makes a significant difference.
It's already got to change your mind.
Yeah.
Because if you don't put the time in, then it's, she's always acting that way, so she's always bad.
Yeah.
Okay. So now we got the property straight. Okay, what's the
Pervasion.
The pervasion?
Anyone who sometimes acts under the control of destructive emotions is bad. Irrity is necessarily bad.
Yeah? What do you think about that? Yeah? Does sometimes acting under the control of negative emotions make somebody bad? What about if they always acted under the control of negative emotions? Does that make them bad? Why not?
We all have the Buddha nature.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, nobody always acts under the control of negative emotions. And there's a difference between the person and the negative emotions. And they have the Buddha nature, and
the negative emotions are adventitious.
And the negative emotions are adventitious. They're temporary. They can be removed.
And they're a great opportunity for us to develop compassion. Great opportunity to develop compassion towards them in that case.
Yeah. Okay, so got to throw that one out. Now, what about when you, because I'm sure if you say this about your mother, you very easily say, I am bad because I sometimes act under the power of negative emotions. Yeah? What do you think about that one? Yeah. How often do you say that one to yourself? Yeah, almost every time we act under the control of negative emotions, and we realize we are. Yeah. Then immediately that judgment comes, I am bad.
There's something wrong with me.
Yeah.
Which is,
Yeah. There's something wrong with me. What does that mean?
Inherently flawed.
When you say, it's very interesting to analyze these statements that we say to ourselves. When you say, I am bad, what does that mean? You say, the food tastes bad. And then you say, I am bad. What's the bad?
Unworthy, unlovable.
So the food is unworthy and unlovable? The food's yucky, but the person is... No. No, it's interesting, isn't it, how the word bad takes on a different meaning with the person than it does regarding the food. The food is bad, maybe it got spoiled, it got left out, wasn't refrigerated. Yeah, or somebody burnt it. But bad for the person means unworthy, unlovable.
Stupid.
Yeah. Yeah, inherently flawed. Okay. Now, why does bad, who gave bad all those meanings? let me look up what bad means in the dictionary, and let's see what bad means. B-A-D. Failing to reach an acceptable standard. Okay. But here, what's the acceptable standard? Which means? Impossible. Okay, it means unfavorable, not fresh, like spoiled food, not sound, like dilapidated, morally objectionable, evil. So is this what we tell ourselves? I acted under the influence of negative emotions, so I am evil. The horns are growing out of my head.
When I think about this, I more think about the feeling state when I was called bad as a kid. And so it kind of evokes that. It's not like I've ever really defined it so much, but it's kind of this feeling state.
Yeah.
More.
Yeah, that feeling
It's
state
very
comes
old.
up. But that's why it's really good to ask ourselves, what exactly does bad mean? Yeah? And how are we defining it? And does, making a mistake, forget about, acting under negative emotions. We tell ourselves we're bad, meaning unworthy, unlovable, even when we make a mistake. And making a mistake often doesn't have it has nothing to do with ethics, You spell a word wrong. Yeah, you trip, you forget something. None of those are ethical defects. Yeah, but we put bad, meaning maybe stupid. Yeah. But it's quite interesting, isn't it, to actually ask ourselves, what do we mean by that word bad? And who's defining that word? Or is it something, like Venerable Jigme said, you just remember the feeling of being called that, and that feeling is really unpleasant. But what does it really mean?
I don't know what really it means, but what I've learned is that there's standard, and I have to reach that standard. When I don't reach it, I'm bad.
Mm-hmm. But who is it that sets that standard?
The society, us.
Yeah, we set it.
Family, well.
Yeah, sometimes it's family, but it may seem like other people set the standard. But the real thing is when we accept that, because we have the choice of not accepting that standard. Yeah? But often we don't realize we have that choice. And we think that standard is fixed and inherently existent. Yeah. So that's a problem in terms of how we are seeing the standard and defining it. Yeah. Not realizing that we have the choice whether to accept it or not.
Helped me once when somebody described that about societal things as internalized oppression. Because it's a thing of, you learn things in society and then they don't even have to say anything anymore.
No.
You do it to yourself.
Yep. Yep. So that's the functioning of our ignorant mind. Yeah? Mm-hmm.
I think it's linked also to expectations. So when we defined people's roles and the expectations that are linked with that, then it becomes internalized and it becomes like a prison.
Yeah.
Because we have to live up to those expectations, and then if we don't, we're bad.
Yeah. Yeah. But what if we said, that's not my standard? Yeah? They set standards about how women should look. Do any of us look that way? Yeah? Does it mean we're bad? Yeah? We've chosen not to accept the societal standard of how women should look. Yeah? Does that bother you, that you rejected the societal standard? Do you feel bad about it? Do you feel guilty? I really should have long hair and earrings. Yeah? Yeah, I should really wear some makeup. Yeah. So, there's a very good example where we didn't accept the societal standard and we feel completely okay with it. So then, and there's no good, there's no bad about it. It's just, we have that freedom and we said no. So, what? We should give ourselves freedom in other areas, too.
This was a big turning point for me in living here, because when we learn about the self-centered thought, see, I say self-centered thought. And the reason I say that is because I couldn't separate out the self-centeredness from my sense of self. And that was really problematic for me.
Mm-hmm.
And so always remembering it's a thought helps me not to take it on as who I am.
Mm.
But the thing that really helped me was what you're talking about here is cultivating a really healthy sense of integrity based on the teachings, the ethical teachings in particular.
Mm-hmm.
And that sense of integrity makes all of this just disappear. And I think what Venerable Jigme is saying is where it really has to work at that level. Like you have, for me personally, I have to go into that feeling and allow myself to feel it in a place where I can be aware of it and then work with it, not hide from it, because it's the thing with shame. It's so uncomfortable to feel that we usually would not. And so then we don't ever dissipate it. It just lingers there as something undefined.
Yeah.
But if you don't work with it with a healthy way, then that doesn't go so well. But I think this healthy sense of integrity based on the teachings is really the antidote for a lot of them.
Yeah.
But to say no to those standards, it takes a lot of courage.
Yes.
Because you get bullied, you get laughed at, you get a lot of stuff that comes with it.
Yeah.
You really need to be courageous and say no.
Yeah. You do need to be courageous, but sometimes our anticipation of being bullied or laughed at or ridiculed is much greater than what actually happens. And all that depends too on how, if we pay attention. There was one time I was in Singapore and somebody invited me out for lunch, Donna. And we were walking in this restaurant and going to sit down. And my friend said, do you realize everybody's looking at you? And I said, no. I've been ordained so long that I don't even notice that happening. Yeah. So for her, she noticed it. Oh, I'm with somebody that everybody's staring at. For me, it was like non-issue. Yeah. So it's the same way, like when I'm in the airplane and they say, what would you like to drink, sir? Or I'm in the women's bathroom and somebody comes in and they go, oh! So we have a choice in all those situations about, how much we let somebody else's response to how we look affect us. You know, we have a choice regarding that. Yeah? So it's kind of what you talked about with your buttons. If there's certain things that are our buttons, then those things get pressed very easily, and we're extremely self-conscious of certain things. But if those things aren't our buttons, then even somebody's going around pushing, there's nothing there for them to push. Yeah. So it has really a lot to do with the state of our mind and how much we've made peace with our relationship with other people and our relationship with society. Yeah. Because the thing is, as long as we have the buttons, somebody's going to push them. And when we don't have buttons, people can act the very same way, and doesn't faze us in the least. And that depends on us. One time, when my brother was getting married, at breakfast that morning, I was sitting with my mom and my sister-in-law and my sister, and my mom starts telling me what she would like me to wear. And, you know, I was an adult, and here I am, and Mom's saying, you know, how about wearing this? And how about wearing this means you should wear this, okay? And I said, okay. And then after breakfast, my sister-in-law and sister said to me, wow, we can't believe she talked to you that way. And we can't believe that you agreed to wear what she said. And I said, you know, it makes her happy. It's no sweat off of my back. I'm no longer a teenager. I don't need to assert my autonomy in front of my mother. Yeah, I know I'm an autonomous result, an autonomous adult. Let's try that again. She sells sea cells by the seashore. Yeah, so I know I'm an autonomous adult. Yeah, so she can tell me what to wear, and I can say yes, and it's okay. Yeah? But if the same thing happened when I was 16, you know, it would not have been okay. And the difference is just the mind, my mind, yeah. So this is the nice thing when we realize in these kinds of situations that we have a choice about how to see it. You know, it's not a given. These things are not inherently existent on our head, boxing us in. Okay? So can we ease up on your mom a little bit? Can we ease up on you too? Yeah. You're not going to say, I am bad because I gave a stinking syllogism that doesn't make any sense. I've been needling her all week about all the small things she does. Yeah. Yeah. I haven't been successful then. You know, because this is how, you know, you grow, is if, you know, you get needled and you can laugh at it. Yeah? Okay. So then I had also asked you, remember sometime last week, about study and meditation and service and transforming your mind? So Venerable Jampa sent us all her reflections on it. Somebody want to share their reflections? Okay, think on the spot. Can you think on the spot? Yes. Anybody think? Yeah? Okay, so what do you think? So how does study and teachings help you with your meditation, with your service, and with transforming your mind? Yeah.
Well, the studying gives me a context of what I'm going to meditate on. Mm-hmm. I remember you were talking about one of your teachers, I don't know if it was Lama Yeshe or Geshe Sopa, or somebody had come to them and say, "Oh, Lama, we want to do silent retreat for," and he would say, "What are you going to meditate on? You don't know anything." And so, yeah, I think I did a lot of sitting meditation for a long time, and it was sporadic, but it also was uninformed. I didn't really have a lot of knowledge of a Buddhist view, and coming here, I have found that was very helpful to me, the Lam Rim especially, the teachings about what to think, be thinking about, and how to work with the mind.
Yeah.
And so, and then by meditating on those, then I can really use them to try and transform my mind.
Yeah.
I've been thinking about how the offering service affects the mind, though, and I think it has a lot to do with what mind we bring to it, because we could be thinking, "Oh, this is a chance to make merit." We could be approaching it with a mind of acceptance and humility, or we can be approaching it with, "Why am I doing this? This is beneath me. I could be doing this or that. Why are they telling me what to do?" And we're really missing a chance to get a lot out of it.
Mm-hmm. So offering service can help with transforming the mind.
It can, but we have to be using it that way.
Yeah.
A hammer can hammer a nail, but you have to be using it that way.
Yeah. Okay. How does study and reflecting help you in your offering service? Or studying and teaching, how does that help you? How does that affect your offering service?
I think the most powerful thing is that it deepens my refuge. When I look at it and say, I am offering service to the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, it's not about the list, it's not about because somebody says it has to be done, but I'm doing it for the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. It changes my whole perspective on no matter what I'm doing. That motivation is much more powerful than list planning and doing things because I have to or whatever. So, and then also deepens my refuge, because then it connects what I do here a lot in my life to what I have my refuge in. So I'm connecting the dots much more strongly.
Yeah.
And it brings a lot of joy, because that lets go of all the self-centered thought, it lets go of all the agenda, lets go of all the biases of what I like to do and what I don't like to do. It really levels the playing field for me on what I'm doing, as long as I'm offering it to the three jewels.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
For me, offering service is really where I get to test and see whether what I'm learning and what I'm working on is actually having an effect on my mind. Because if I'm doing it correctly, if I am understanding what I'm studying and listening correctly, then that should be helping me to interact in a more positive way with the people around me and also with what I'm doing. And so if I see that in fact that is happening, then I can say, okay, this is having a positive effect. Conversely, if I'm struggling with those interactions, if I'm struggling with certain aspect of offering service, then I can go back to study and say, okay, how can I inform what I'm doing with study and listening so that I can transform the experience I'm having in offering service? And of course, the study and the listening is not going to have an immediate effect unless I contemplate and meditate on it and then actually use it to deepen it and transform my behavior and my attitude and my approach.
Yeah.
For me, the study, especially early on, helped me to get rid of a lot of confusion about ethics. Because, you know, when you're working with other people and the whole society has kind of certain norms that are actually unethical but are accepted. So then the like say the 10 destructive actions, that in particular helped me to get rid of a lot of confusion about how to be when I offer service or work.
I think for me, study and reflection has also helped me create the context for offering service, so that the deeply I understand impermanence and dependent arising, the more lightly I can hold the work that I'm doing and give it more focus, so that I realize that I am simply creating causes and I don't need to attach so tightly to either the outcomes or my ideas about how things need to be done.
Yeah.
And I have therefore more capacity because I'm not hanging on to any piece of it.
Yeah. These are all very good, what people are saying, you know, how your study influences your offering service. How does your offering service influence your study? Yeah.
Something I've noticed since coming to the Abbey is that the extra focus on offering service and the intention with which we do it here, the connection that I've seemed to make with that is that whatever little bit of study I have becomes much richer, it seems. That's been my experience, that although, you know, there may not be as many hours put into study, the study that I have is very fruitful, and I appreciate that, and I link it with the merit creating.
Yeah.
For me, offering service often reminds me about the opportunity I have here, and that I could be in many other different places in not a good situation. And so it just kind of makes me humble, I think, a little bit, and that I can do these activities here that are, if I put my mind to them properly, they're virtuous and beneficial.
I think also when we offer service, we create merit, and that merit fertilizes our mind. So when we study, the teachings go in on a different level. Maybe this is relating to what you're saying, yeah.
Agree with the merit thing too, and even, I didn't really believe in that before I lived here so much, but now I do, which is a big change. But the other thing is our offering service is creating the opportunity we have just to have this place, and to have the opportunity to receive so many teachings and to spend our time this way.
Yeah, that's true. We should not forget that it's because we offer service that the Abbey can exist, so that we can have the teachings.
This would have seemed to me to be not possible, but I have experienced that the offerings, the combination of meditation, offering service, and study and sharing the Dharma has increased my capacity to deal with and handle things that come my way that I would not have been able to before. So there's some added gain, flexibility of mind, and quickness of mind to be able to shift from one approach to the other, one activity to the other on a dime, and almost seamlessly. That is, I think, really the product of our schedule, what we do here and how we do it. And it's very beneficial, I think. That my mind is less hung up on, now I have to switch gears, now I have to switch gears, now I have to do this. It just seems like it's seamless from one thing to the other.
I've come to see offering service as a great opportunity to practice generosity and the other perfections, but especially generosity, because living here I feel like we're always doing something for the collective or for guests. So really taking care of guests, that's not something I was used to doing, and I see, wow, that's a big growth area for me, opening my heart to all the guests. And also letting go of ownership of, the outcome. Like, this is my work, that doesn't really work here. It always has to be kind of, it's for the Abbey, it's for the Sangha. It's not just for me and my reputation.
Very good.
I find study and reflection helps a lot for my meditation and for offering service and my general daily mundane tasks, in the way that it helps to inspire me. Even reading over stuff that I've already read over, just renewing these ideas in my mind, it renews my motivation, it inspires my motivation, and keeps me like, today I'm gonna approach the day with a positive mind for a positive reason.
Yeah, it makes the mind happy. Yeah, very good question. So please keep thinking about them, We didn't talk much about how meditation affects study and transforming your mind and offering service. We kind of touched on that roundabout, but think about that too, because that's a chunk of our daily schedule. And how does that fit into, what we're doing here? Because a lot of what we're doing is what they call character transformation. We're trying to transform from a self-centered character to a open-hearted character. So it's not just maybe this is what makes it different from a university setting. University setting doesn't matter what your character is as long as you get the grades. Because that's not the purpose, there. But here for us, the character transformation, the way a person is in the world, is what we're really here for. Okay. So back to non-existence. Recall that the selfless encompasses both existence and non-existence. Thus, the Buddhists are making the point that everything we can imagine, whether real in any sense or not at all real, is free from a self. It may seem trivial to note that non-existents are free of a self, but it better disposes of the question to note that a permanent, unitary, independent self is not to be found anywhere. So, saying non-existents are free of a self, because sometimes we can start thinking, the inherent existence that I'm negating is inherently existent. It won't go away. Without understanding that inherent existence has never existed. It will never exist. So there's nothing there to destroy. We're just trying to realize what is. Okay, so proposed, now that we said non-existents don't exist, there's going to be a proposed definition of the non-existent. Okay? So there is no definition of a non-existent because a non-existent does not exist and has no qualities to be characterized. So remember, characterize or characteristics, it's the same word that comes in definition. Yeah? Like, the word is sen, and it means sign, characteristic. When you give a definition, you're talking about the characteristics of something that help you identify what the object is. So it's a word that, you know, has several meanings. Definitions and definienda are established on the basis of their illustrations, which must be existent. Therefore, there can be no definition of the non-existent. Why? Because they have no illustrations. You know, give me an illustration of a non-existent. Okay. The badness of my mother. Yeah, how can that be an illustration? It doesn't exist. Okay, so you were trying to prove a non-existent. Yeah. Even so, some say that the definition of a non-existent is that which is not observed by valid cognition or by a reliable cognizer. Okay? So that actually tells us what existent means, is something that is observed by a reliable cognizer. According to Demalocho Rinpoche, this proposed definition incurs the fallacy of non-occurrence. A non-existent is not an existent and is not experienced as an existent. Therefore, it does not occur. A non-existent would have to be established, meaning established by a reliable cognizer, with its illustrations, those things that illustrate the quality of a non-existent. However, we cannot observe by any reliable consciousness that, for instance, a square circle or any other non-existent has the quality of a non-existent. Okay? So you can't, something that is non-existent, you can't say it has the quality of a non-existent because non-existents don't have any characteristics or any qualities. Yeah, why? Because they're totally non-existent. Okay? Yeah, I mean, what's the quality of a square circle? Yeah, what's the quality of weapons of mass destruction in Iraq? You know? You can't describe it because it doesn't exist. Yeah? So we can't give us an illustration. Well, there's this non-existent chemical buried in the desert sands in Iraq, you know, because such a thing doesn't exist. So if you can't give an illustration of the thing, yeah. Okay. A non-existent would have to be established, meaning established by a reliable cognizer with its illustrations, those things that illustrate the quality of a non-existent. However, we cannot observe by any reliable cognizer that, for instance, a square circle or any other non-existent has the quality of a non-existent. So there is nothing to illustrate a non-existent. And so there is no definition of a non-existent. Okay? Also, I know of no division of non-existence. Now, that would be an interesting thing, you know? And somehow I doubt there could be. Well, maybe there's the non-existence in the East, And there's the non-existents in the West. So how are you going to identify those non-existents in the East? Yeah. So examples of non-existence. Even though there are no illustrations, which would have to be existent, of a non-existent, there are plenty of things we can say are non-existent. Okay, so having an illustration of a non-existent and saying something is non-existent are two different things. Okay, plenty of things we can say are non-existent, like a square circle, the currently ruling king of France. Yeah, the well, I won't say it, and so on. But they do not have the quality of being non-existents. They don't have any qualities at all. In American culture, I think the go-to example of a non-existent would be a unicorn. Is that what pops into your mind? What's a unicorn? Yeah. Huh? It's a white horse with a horn. Huh? A horn in the middle of its forehead. It's not a rhinoceros. It's a white horse. Okay. Okay. The stock example of a non-existent in Buddhist reasoning and debate is the horn of a rabbit. I know you may have seen those jackalopes in truck stops in Wyoming, but those things aren't real. Oh, we gave our teachers so many pictures of those. Really, that was the big thing. Let's get Geshe-la a picture of a jackalope. There are horns on a rabbit. Rabbits don't have, do jackalopes exist? Do they have horns? They're totally non-existent.
They put animal horns on a mounted rabbit. Dead rabbit.
Okay, so somebody just glued a horn on a... Okay. Okay. Rabbits don't have horns, and there is no horn of a rabbit. Other stock examples are the fruit of a dead tree or the child of a barren woman. We can, I got to give Purdue some credit here. We can update this last example to the child, son or daughter of a childless couple. Yeah. You can make these nothings endlessly, make up these nothings endlessly, but you can't produce a single one. Yeah, so somebody says, show me one of those, you can't. Yeah. If some things existed in the past, now this is interesting, if some things existed in the past but no longer exist, like presumably dinosaurs. Okay, so what do you think about dinosaurs? Are dinosaurs existent or are they non-existent? No, dinosaurs are not existent. But can you say dinosaurs are non-existent? Yeah, you can say dinosaurs are non-existent now. Can you say dinosaurs are totally non-existent? Like a rabbit's horn is totally non-existent? Why not? What's the difference between a rabbit horn and a dinosaur? Yeah, the rabbit horn never existed. Dinosaurs did exist. So there's a difference between something that existed, that ceased, and something that never existed. Okay? You can't see either one of them now, but there's a difference between them. So this has always been a puzzle for the Buddhist tenet systems, okay? So, we're talking according to this school, okay, which the Prasangikas refute. If some things existed in the past but no longer exist, like presumably dinosaurs, they too would not work as examples of a non-existent. They didn't proofread that. Non-existent should be singular, or you take out the A. Somebody missed it. Okay, but would be considered to be a permanent phenomena, objects observed by thought or conceptuality alone. Okay, so this is according to Satantrika and several of the other lower schools. According to the Gomang collected topics, the past of a phenomena is a non-affirming negative and a permanent phenomenon. Okay? Of course, we can see real dinosaur bones, but dinosaur bones are not dinosaurs any more than your hand is you. But sometimes we think our hand is us. If you wonder, look into dependent arising. If something does not exist right now, but might exist in the future, like a poverty-free world, that too would not be a good example of a non-existent. Rather, according to the Gomang collected topics, a future phenomena, like a past phenomenon, is a permanent phenomenon, observed by thought or conceptuality only. If a poverty-free world never comes to be, a safe bet for a future phenomenon might be the next moment of your own consciousness, okay, which will come to be, which you can think about, but is not presently existent, is not a presently existent, directly observable thing. Okay? So this is according to this school. If it doesn't exist now, if it's a past phenomena or a future phenomena, it is permanent. Okay? Meaning that it doesn't perform any function at all, and it is only known through conceptuality. So we can understand how they could think, oh yeah, you know, a dinosaur or tomorrow's lunch can only be known through conceptuality, you know, because we can only imagine it. But does a past dinosaur or tomorrow's lunch, can it function? Yeah. Does the fact that there used to be dinosaurs, do past dinosaurs perform a function? Yeah, they produce fuel. They produce scholars who study them. Movies. They entertain children endlessly. Yeah. If dinosaurs never existed whatsoever, if the past dinosaurs were totally non-existent, would the world be exactly the same as it is now? No. So the fact that dinosaurs existed and ceased has an effect. It makes a difference. Whereas something that never existed can't make any kind of difference. Yeah. The thought that something that is non-existent exists can have a lot of functions, you know. People believe all sorts of things that are non-existent exist, and those thoughts have a lot of results. But those things that they believe in don't have any results because they don't exist. But a past dinosaur, yeah, does have, it functions. So that's why the Prasangikas say that the past phenomena are affirming negatives. Okay, remember this? Yeah? So an affirming negative affirms one thing but negates another. So with the dinosaurs, it affirms that dinosaurs existed, and it negates their present existence. Okay? So that's why they're said to be functioning things and affirming negatives. Okay? Hold on. Let's think about tomorrow's lunch. Does tomorrow's lunch exist now? No. Is it totally non-existent? No. Why not? The causes for it exist. And if tomorrow's lunch were totally non-existent, nobody could ever cook it. Yeah? So the causes for tomorrow's lunch exist, and that may come into existence, even though it doesn't exist now. Okay? So it too is an affirming negative. What's being affirmed is that the causes for it exist. What's being negated is that those causes have produced their result in the present. Okay, so this is a tenet unique to the Prasangikas. You know, everybody else just signs these things off and says they're permanent. Yeah, and so this is how Prasangikas also talk about how an action produces a result. Okay, you criticize somebody. Yeah, that action ceases. The having ceased of that action carries the potential to produce the result. Yeah, so there's a difference between the criticism never having happened and the criticism having happened and then ceased. Okay, so it's letting us know that that the having happened of things makes a difference. Okay, and that's how we could say that we've been influenced by previous conditions. We've experienced different things, and because of those conditions that we experience, which don't exist now in the present moment, but because they existed in the past, they have had an effect on who we are now. Okay? But we can also undo those conditionings going into the future. So those things are not permanent, they're not inherently existent. Okay? They're functional things.
I remember when we were talking about the smoke and the fire, I thought Dan Perdue said that just because there's a cause, you can't infer that there's necessarily an effect.
Yeah, unless you know all the other circumstances.
Mm-hmm. So how could we say because there's a cause for tomorrow's lunch, it therefore exists?
Yeah, because when we say tomorrow's lunch exists, it doesn't mean that there's already an existing plate of food. Tomorrow's lunch is not a plate of food. Tomorrow's lunch is an affirming negative. Okay, so it's not like when we say tomorrow's lunch exists, that doesn't mean that there's a plate of food existing in the future and we're waiting until the future, we reel in the future and that plate of food appears before us. Tomorrow's lunch is a potential thing. But if it were totally non-existent, we could never cook it. Now, the causes for it exist now, okay? But if something comes and interferes with those causes producing a result, like the kitchen catches on fire, so we can't, everything self-cooks, we can't cook it, then tomorrow's lunch won't come into existence. But right now, the potential, the possibility for it to exist, exists because the causes are there. Okay? But again, just because the causes are there, it doesn't mean that all the conditions and all the causes are present. Because if all the conditions and causes were present now, the thing would exist.
Like our Buddhahood exists, it just doesn't exist now.
Right. Yeah. But you can't say our Buddhahood is non-existent, because if you did, then we could never become Buddhists.
I think with what Daniel Perdue was saying was not that you, in a syllogism, you couldn't say specifically because you have a cause that a certain effect would happen.
Mm-hmm.
But a cause is going to have an effect. Whether the causes, the potential causes for a future lunch, become tomorrow's lunch or somebody's midnight snack, it still has it's going to become something.
Or the fuel for the fire that burned it.
But it has a physical continuum.
Yeah.
Thing about where you were saying the past phenomena are affirming negatives, affirms one thing and negates another, and then it affirms that dinosaurs existed. Can you also say it affirms that the having happened of the dinosaurs exists?
The having happened is the past phenomena. Yeah.
The having ceased?
Yeah, the having ceased.
The past phenomenon.
Yeah.
Even though it's changing?
Yeah. Because remember, past things are functioning things.
Right, but it's changing, it becomes a cause for something.
Yeah, right. So the past phenomena doesn't mean that dinosaur existing cast in concrete in the past. That's not the past dinosaur, just as tomorrow's lunch isn't a plate of food existing somewhere in outer space. Okay? So it's a different way of thinking. Yeah, this is exactly where we solidify things. Okay? Yeah.
Sure, if I understand this correctly, you said that the other schools think of these future things as permanent.
Mm-hmm.
But if they're permanent, then they can't change and come into existence.
That's what the Prasangikas say to refute them. Okay. But those schools say, well, you can't point to a future thing now. It exists only in your mind, in your imagination. So it's known only by conceptuality, so it must be a permanent phenomena. That's how they reason it. Okay. So different schools have different reasons for what they say. Yeah.
A fault I see with that explanation of the Satantrikas of saying that these are not non-existents because they're objects of the mind, basically. What does he say? Objects observed by thought or conceptuality alone.
Yeah.
But, I mean, so is the horn of a rabbit.
Yeah, but, they remember when they talk about permanent things? Just because it's observed by conceptuality doesn't mean it's an existent. Okay?
Right. Because
that conceptuality has to be a reliable cognizer. It's not just any old conception.
And with people can splice or graft horn buds onto another animal, or they can manipulate genes in the future. There may be a future jackalope.
Yeah. So we'll please tell us.
Cross that bridge when we come to it.
Yes, When you become a Buddha, please tell us when you've seen the jackalope, okay? Okay, examples of the selfless. The presentation of examples of the selfless finishes out the consideration of the selfless, which in traditional style is done in terms of definition, divisions, and illustrations. So that's how they usually talk about things. Examples of the selfless would include anything existent as well as anything non-existent, except the selfless itself and all the things mutually inclusive with it. Okay? The selfless is existent and permanent. Why is it permanent? Because it includes permanent and impermanent things. Examples of the selfless would include anything existent as well as anything non-existent, except the selfless itself and all the things mutually inclusive with it. The selfless is existent and permanent and, of course, selfless. However, the selfless is neither an illustration nor an example of the selfless, because what is put forth as either of these, meaning as the illustration or example, should be easier to understand than that which is it is meant to illustrate or exemplify. But of course, the selfless is not easier to understand than the selfless. Okay. So it can't be an example of itself. Because when you give an example or an illustration, it should be easier to understand than what it exemplifies. But you can't say the selfless is an example of the selfless, because if you've understood the selfless that is the example, then you must have already understood the selfless that is being exemplified. Yeah. Okay, then exercise 9. I think you've done this in your past things that Venerable Sepal has guided. Okay, but we'll just read them here. So memorize the definition of the selfless, that which is without a self. Go to the table of definitions in the appendix. Pick out and memorize 3 or 4 pairs of definitions and definienda of existent and its companions, object of knowledge, and so on. It will be easier to remember them if you review the descriptions of the definitions in the text above. Also put in mind some illustrations of existence that you can use in debate. What's an illustration of an existent? Give me an illustration. Huh? My computer. Yeah, confusion. Huh? Non-cow. A non-cow, yeah. Okay. Using, although everything that is a non-cow isn't necessarily existent. Yeah. Using the same sources, pick out and memorize 3 or 4 pairs of definitions and definienda of impermanent phenomena and its companions. Also put in some illustrations. Okay, what's an impermanent phenomena? A momentary phenomena. Okay, an example? The whiteboard. Okay. Okay. Do the same with 3 or 4 pairs of definitions and definienda of a permanent phenomenon and its companions. Also put in mind some illustrations of permanent phenomena. So what's a permanent phenomena? Yeah. A common locus of a phenomena that is that is a phenomena and non-momentary. Okay. so much easier to say a non-momentary phenomena. Okay. Okay, what's an example? Uncompounded space. Okay, so just familiarize yourself with the pieces on the chessboard and learn how they move so you can understand the lessons in this book and gain the skills. You will then be able to understand English language, debate video, and check for the mistakes. Okay. So now, basic Buddhist ontology. Shall we start reading this? We have a few more minutes left. Okay. The Buddhists categorize meditation into two types. Well, that's what he says. Meditative stabilization, samadhi. By the way, I translate samadhi as concentration. Jeffries translates samadhi as meditative stabilization, and then he translates, because we have the three higher trainings, sila, samadhi, prajna. So samadhi there, he translates as meditative stabilization. I translate as concentration, because that goes much easier with the Pali. That's how they do it. And then the fifth of the 6 perfections, samten in Tibetan, dhyana must be dhyana in Sanskrit, is, he translates as concentration, and I call that meditative stabilization, but I usually just use the Sanskrit term dhyana. And in Pali, it's jhana. And the Pali people usually keep it in Pali, too. Meditative stabilization is like too long to... There's 4 meditative stabilizations. The first meditative stabilization, the second meditative stabilization. Too many syllables, okay, for lazy people like me. Okay, so meditative stabilization, which is meditation for the sake of developing concentration, and analytical meditation. Okay, so I'll read this paragraph and then I'll discuss it. The broad category of analytical meditation has 2 sides: analysis of the nature of phenomena and cultivation of attitudes such as love and compassion. The analysis of the nature of phenomena is known as special insight, or vipassana. I'll read it and then. Concentration or meditative stabilization is essential for developing special insight. But in the Buddhist way of thinking, ultimately it is special insight that liberates a person from the round of rebirth. Okay, so special insight, that's a fine translation of vipassana, because the pasana, or pashana, as it is in Sanskrit, means to see. Yeah, so like path of seeing, it's the same there. And V is like an accentuating syllable. So saying special insight is fine. I usually, again, go here with the Pali and just say insight, because it's fewer syllables, and I find the longer a term is, the easier it is to get lost in having so many words. So I just say insight. Okay, now, here it's interesting how he divided it. Analytical meditation, he's saying, has 2 sides. The analysis that you're going to find in vipassana, where you're analyzing the nature of the object, and the analysis that goes when you're cultivating an attitude such as love and compassion, where you're, with love, he would say, you're probably analyzing the kindness of others and wishing them happiness or whatever. His Holiness usually talks about it, and this is explained in volume 1, I believe. he says there's different ways to divide meditation. One is into, analysis, talking about analytical meditations, and meditations to create concentration. And then, so that's one way where you're, you just think, And then the other way is meditation to develop a certain feeling. No, I'm sorry. When he talks about analytical meditation, it's meditation to understand an object, to realize an object. For example, meditation on impermanence or on emptiness. Okay? So to develop concentration is not included in analytical meditation itself. But we can take the overall thing of meditation, and one way to divide it is into analytic meditation and meditation to develop concentration. So meditation to develop concentration is to gain single-pointedness. That's on the side of samadhi and serenity. Analytic meditation is on the side of wisdom and on the wisdom and insight. Okay, so that's one way one way to divide meditation: analytical and for developing understanding, for developing concentration. And then His Holiness says another way to talk about meditation is in terms of meditation to cultivate a certain feeling. And that's where he puts meditation on love and compassion, because he says there you're not trying to realize an object or understand an object. You're trying to transform your mind into the nature of a certain mental state. You're trying to generate that mental state in your heart. Okay, so he doesn't put that under analytical meditation. He instead talks about different ways to divide meditation to start with. Okay?
What are those second two categories? What are the two categories?
And the second one, it's just, there's not two. The first one, there's analytical and for concentration. Or the first.
Yeah, and the concentration.
Or you could say the first type of meditation is analysis. Second type of meditation is concentration. Third type of meditation, but usually they talk about concentration and analysis as going, in the same breath but having very different functions. But then the whole different type of meditation is when you're transforming your mind into a certain mental state, like developing love or compassion, something like that, okay? Because there, when you're doing analytical meditation, you're trying to realize what emptiness is or what impermanence is. There's an object that you need to understand, and you have to analyze in order to understand it. With love and compassion, there's no object there to analyze in that way. That's not the outcome of the meditation. The outcome is a transformation in your heart in terms of the feeling state of your heart. Okay, you've transformed your mind into a different state. Among the differing phases of Buddhism that have taken root in America is a set of practices known as Vipassana. Vipassana is a word of the Pali language, the language of the Buddhist texts of the Theravada tradition, which some call Southern Buddhism or Pali tradition, practiced in such countries as Burma, Sri Lanka, Cambodia, Laos, and Thailand. Pali is a degenerate form of Sanskrit, a Sanskritic or Prakrit. Now the Pali people would go crazy with that sentence. No, the Buddha spoke in Pali, and Sanskrit is a degenerate form of Pali. Okay? Actually, it seems like the Buddha spoke. Prakrit seems to be the kind of dialects that were spoken widely across northern India, and he spoke in some kind of Prakrit, which was a common language. And then later, things became written down in Sanskrit because Sanskrit was the language of the intelligentsia. It was the language that the Brahmins used, that the Vedas were written in. So it was seen as a holy language, and so, one whole tradition, most of their things were translated into Sanskrit. Then the southern tradition, when Buddhism went south to Sri Lanka, then they needed a language for the intelligentsia, a high-status language. And so that's where Pali came about. It seems like in Sri Lanka, the very early scriptures that were written down there were not in Pali. They were in, the Sri Lanka, the Sinhalese language. And then it was really Buddhaghosa who wrote things down in Pali. And he was already in the 5th, 6th century. Yeah. So it was already late. But, every tradition has their own history that they will say is God's truth. Yeah, even though God is a non-existent, so God's truth is also non-existent. So that history is, I won't comment. So he says here, Pali is a degenerate form of Sanskrit, a Sanskritic or Prakrit. It is not a language for degenerates, thank you, but a degenerated language, as Italian is a degenerated form of Latin. As languages age, they get simplified and sort of rounded off. In English, for instance, the old subjunctive case remains only in certain phrases. We say, I wish I were wealthy, rather than I wish I was wealthy. Okay, so that's the subjunctive case. But a lot of people nowadays don't even say that, yeah. Looking at your King James translation of the Bible, no thank you, note that we have almost completely lost the second person familiar pronoun, thou. Yeah? I mean, look at Shakespeare. All these words Shakespeare used, we don't use now. So languages are changing. Yeah? He calls the change degeneration. So maybe some people see it as degeneration. Other people probably see it as development. So Pali is the degenerate form of the more ancient Sanskrit. The Pali word vipassana is a simplification of the Sanskrit vipassana. In both words, the starting syllable V is what is known as an intensifier, like super, in super weird. He has great examples, huh? The pasana, like our friend Achan Pasano, that's what's the same. The pasana or pasana means seeing. So vipassana, which is an English word now, is super seeing or special insight. Vipassana meditation begins, and by the way, Vipassana in America has come to be known as a tradition, as a Buddhist tradition. It's not. The word traditionally has not been used as a Buddhist tradition. It's a type of meditation, and that type of meditation is found in all the Buddhist traditions. Yeah? So it's not really kosher to say Vipassana is equal to Theravada. Also, I think a lot of the Vipassana people don't agree with that. They want it to be, their tradition to be different than Theravada. Anyway, Vipassana meditation begins with paying attention to your breath, paying attention to your movements, paying attention to every step and thought. It proceeds to mindfulness. There has been some good success in using Vipassana meditations in prison in the United States because it helps a person develop better impulse control. And an example with that is, what's his name? Goenka. You know, Goenka-ji has had some of his students lead Vipassana retreats, like in the prison in Delhi called, skipping my mind right now, but it's one of the worst prisons, and they had a week or 10-day long Vipassana retreat, and the inmates and the staff were completely transformed by it. There's a movie, a video called Dharma Brothers that talks about, or another one doing Vipassana doing time. Yeah. Okay. The meditator becomes more circumspect and mindful. In my own limited experience, I thought Vipassana meditation helped me to distinguish between the consciousness and the object observed. So here you can see if somebody studied how they do the meditation is going to be different. Okay? And this is what he's going to get into. We'll stop here tonight. But what he's going to get into is when you learn all these categories of different phenomena, it really helps your Vipassana meditation because then you know what to look for and what to identify. Yeah? So identifying objects and, you know, having terms and definitions that relate to objects helps your meditation because then you know what to look for. Otherwise, they say, well, observe your experience, and people don't know what it means. It's kind of like how we found some people have a lot of words to identify their emotions, and some people grew up in homes where emotions were never discussed. They don't know how to identify their emotions. Yeah? So if you've studied and you have terms and you learn definitions, it helps you know what to look for in your experience, which helps your Vipassana meditation when you're supposed to be identifying the different elements of your experience.
Question from Venerable Jampa online.
Mm-hmm.
Saying, with love and compassion, can you start with analytical meditation, as you have to understand first what it entails?
Mm-hmm.
We or I always said when leading Lamrim meditation that we analyze and then concentrate on the feeling result of that, also in regard to love and compassion.
Yeah, so that would be a reason why he puts it under analytic meditation, because you definitely, when you meditate on love and compassion, you can't just sit there and say, love, 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 and a feeling comes into your mind and focus on that. You have to really think about sentient beings, think about their kindness, think about their dukkha. So that's what the analysis part of it would be. And then focusing on that single-pointedly would be the concentration part of it. But it's different from what His Holiness usually calls analytical meditation, because you're transforming your mental state. You're not understanding an object. Because if you meditate on love and compassion, and you might think of sentient beings and think of their dukkha, but your heart is completely flat, you may have done some analysis, but you haven't done meditation on love and compassion because there hasn't been the change in your heart. So here we have, just because something isn't always called analytical meditation doesn't mean that you never do analysis when you do it. Okay?
I go back to your translations. So, what is the Sanskrit that you use for meditative stabilization?
Dhyana.
I see. Okay, thanks.
Yeah. So when we talk about the four dhyanas, yeah, then Jeffrey calls them the four concentrations. Okay. And dhyana is also what in Chinese is Chan and what in Japanese is Zen.